Hey guys, that mom here. So we are in my sleep series, and today I want to share with you my personal struggle that I had with getting Q on the right track when she was about 3 or 4 months old. So I mentioned in my last video how when Q was between 3 and 4 months old, I started to see some of the signs for the dreaded 4-month sleep regression. And I was terrified. I started doing a ton of research, and all I could find was people saying that moms saying how the 4-month sleep regression had attacked and it would permanently change their lives, and their child has never slept good since, and this terrified me. Up until this point, really was not a fan of any type of sleep training. If you breathe air, you have heard of sleep training, and it has a really negative connotation. That's because the predominant form of sleep training that is so popular is the cry it out method, where essentially, and there's a whole book, and I'm not going to say that it doesn't have merit, and I'm not going to say that it can't work. I just knew it wasn't something I wanted to do. But essentially what you do is when your child hits that age between 3 and 4 months, when they can developmentally should be putting themselves to sleep, you're going to, put your child down, walk out the door, shut the door, and let them just cry it out. Basically, they'll learn the hard way. And this was just something that I hated the thought of. Not because I was not okay with Q crying. I realize that in her life, there will be times where, for her own good, she will need to do something that she does not necessarily like, and that may involve tears. I'm okay with that. But I was not okay with taking my 3 or 4 month old child and locking her in a room when she just came out of this phase of development where she's completely dependent on me. Talk about rude awakening, and just teach her that mommy's no longer here for you, see ya. And I know that the book says that all of the time that you spend with them during the day, loving and nurturing them, can't be undone by, this one experience at night, but I was not willing to risk it. I personally, for me, did not like the thought of doing it. But as I'm reading about, different sleep training things, none of them happen to mention the 4-month regression. So I'm thinking that it is probably not much of a real thing. This is purely my own conclusion, was I've never mentioned before, but before I became a mommy, I was a behavior analyst. I've worked giving behavioral therapy to children for over 10 years. So when I stopped and kind of looked at this behavior that my child was exhibiting of waking frequently and what she was needing, and I broke it down and I analyzed it, the conclusion that I came to was not that just it was some mythical sleep regression, but what causes this regression was the fact that she had not learned the skills that she needed to learn. And that's because I did not teach her. So I mentioned in my last video that around this age of just before hitting 4 months, everything that I was reading was telling me that Q should have a schedule. So by the time your child's 4 months, they should have a pretty darn good schedule going. That she should be getting 3 to 4 hour to hour and a half long naps. She should be napping at least every 2 hours, if not probably sooner. She should have a pretty good bedtime routine going. She should be getting between 14 and 16 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period. And I was doing none of these things. Additionally, she should be able to put herself to sleep independently, where I was still having to hold her until she was out like a rock, and before I even attempted to put her down. So all of the skills that she should have, I had not taught her. I hated the idea of having a schedule. I loved that she was this easy, go with the flow baby that could go anywhere and do anything. And she was never really crabby, so it wasn't like, she never showed signs of really being an overtired baby. She was always really happy. And so I was like, no way, I don't want to have to schedule my baby. She's so happy and easy and go with the flow, and I could take her anywhere and we could do anything, and it was great. Now, because I could take her anywhere and she would sleep when we were out and about, she was only taking cat naps, which in my know-nothing brain at this point, I'm thinking meant she's not that tired. If she were tired, she would sleep. I was not viewing sleep as being something that I kind of needed to teach her to do. I wasn't. I figured if she were tired, she would sleep, and when she's no longer tired, she wakes up, and that's what happens. And so when I looked at all of this and I tried to analyze, okay, so every single expert out there, like every single expert out there is saying that X, Y, and Z should be happening, and I'm doing none of it. Is it really just this mysterious 4-month regression? Or is it that I just haven't given my child the skills that they need to be successful? Odds are it's the latter. I just didn't give her the skills that she needed to be successful. Well, now I, in a way, have kind of created this monster because I didn't want to schedule her out, and I didn't want to try and teach her how to put herself to sleep when she was 3 months because I didn't want to see her cry. I have now, for a month, reinforced the inappropriate behaviors that she had associated with sleep, and I've created a monster. And like I said, from being a behaviorist, I know that by reinforcing these inappropriate behaviors, I now have to break them, which is going to be challenging. Fortunately for me, I was only about a month in. I hadn't been reinforcing these behaviors for very long. That's why I said in my previous videos, you're really going to want to make sure you work on these things when your child is young, because I can only imagine how challenging it would be to do some of the things that I needed to do with a 9, 10, 11-month-old, let alone a 1 or 2-year-old. Forget it. So I'm really glad that I kind of caught it when I did. But I realized, all right, I got some behaviors that I need to break. I have some skills that I need to teach, and I need to really get the ball rolling on it. But I hate everything that's out there with regard to sleep training. I even hate the term sleep training because it has such a negative connotation. So what was I going to do? So I'm up in the middle of the night because my baby wakes up every hour, and I'm holding my baby, and I'm just researching. I tried a few things. I tried just instilling some of the stuff on my own, and it was just very, very challenging. And so I had this light bulb moment where I thought, okay, the only other time I've had a super struggle since becoming a mom was with breastfeeding, and well, there were lactation consultants. Are there sleep consultants? And so that's what I Google searched. I Google searched sleep consultants, and I wanted to see, was there someone that could help properly guide me through doing the very best that I can by my child, who can tell me what is an appropriate and realistic expectation, what could be harmful, what is okay to do, and that's what I was looking for. So I looked up sleep consultant, and that is when I found the Sleep Lady. So right off of her website, I instantly knew that I was gonna like this. I like that she talked about a gentle, quote unquote, no cry technique. She says no cry just because, you know, you should have fewer tears. It's really not no cry. At the end of the day, when you're trying to teach your child something new, they realistically might cry. Like right now, we're trying to teach Q how to cry or how to crawl, and guess what? Sometimes that means she sits there in the crawl position crying. But you know, we try to push through. So realistically, teaching your child a new skill might end up with a little bit of tears, but at the end of the day, this was supposed to be a gentle technique that is not designed to be harmful at all or traumatic or produce a lot of tears, and I just liked it. So I ended up finding somehow a link that let me read, I think it was like the first 2 or even 3 chapters of her book. Her book is called The Sleep Lady's Goodnight Sleep Tight. And desperate, not sleeping, decided I was going to read all 3 of those chapters sitting right there. And so that is what I did. And I swear it was like she was inside of my brain. Everything that she was just describing was exactly what I was looking for. Talking about, you know, having to teach a baby a new skill and not wanting to be, you know, harmful or detrimental in going about it, and just wanting to be gentle. I mean, it was just as if she were inside my brain. So I begged my husband if I could get the book. We found it on the Kindle app, so I was able to get it on my phone. And in the course of one day, I read the entire book. Now at this point, like I said, Q is 4 months old. I could have just skipped to the 4-month part, but I did not want to. I wanted to know every tiny bit of information I possibly could from this kind, sweet, gentle, knowledgeable sleep guru. So I read all of it, and I'm really, really glad I did. In her book, she describes every single stage of sleep development. I mean, from birth and in that newborn phase, and things that you should be looking for. What is their sleep like? What are little tricks that you could be doing to help set you up for success? And as I'm reading the book, I'm seeing all of the things I had missed. And now, mind you, I am hopefully you would agree, I'm not some dimwit who didn't know a thing. I'm reading and I'm researching, but there were so many things that she had in her book that I just had no clue about, and that I had totally missed the mark on. So even though at this point Q is, I actually think at this point she's about 4.5 months old. Really, I had pretty much dropped the sleep ball at 3 months. So if you watched, the last video, you know that at 3 months was when you were supposed to start instilling all of these, little things in your baby, and I didn't do any of it. So needless to say, I was about 1.5 months behind. And so I was reading all of her tips, and I started to kind of work together a game plan on how I was going to put into place all of her strategies and techniques. Now, I am not going to sit here and share with you what her strategies and techniques are because, well, they're hers, and she has a whole book out there, and I think that all of you should get it. Even if your baby is not even born yet, get the book. It is going to be so helpful for you to read through the things that you should be doing with your child. It's going to help you be educated and informed on what's happening inside with your child's development with regard to sleep and the impacts it can have on the things that they're doing during the day. So I really suggest that each and every one of you go and get the book. Now, I will say what's called, I believe it's called the Sleep Lady Shuffle. That's her little technique for quote unquote sleep training your child. Is not recommended for a child under 6 months. The idea is if you have her book and you read her book and you're doing all of these little tiny baby steps, you probably won't even need her shuffle. But if you do, you won't need it until your child's 6 months of age. She does talk about how some people have tried using it earlier with success. I obviously took a roll of the dice, and I did it when Q was just shy of 5 months. So I was about a month early, but I couldn't. I was in this just negative cycle of her not sleeping, me not sleeping, and by her not sleeping, she wasn't getting the sleep that she needed, which was just making her sleep worse. And I mean, it was just a downward spiral. So I kind of felt like my back was up against the wall and I needed to do it, and it worked out brilliantly. So I am going to really recommend that if you want your child to be successful and you don't want to have some of the hurdles that I had, get her book. If you have a child who is going through a hard time, if some of what you're going through right now sounds similar to what I was experiencing, where you had a baby who was doing great, who was sleeping wonderfully, who never has been that big of a napper, but it's no big deal because they slept great at night and now they're not sleeping, get her book. Read her book. I've shared this with a couple people who have reached out to me telling me that they had sleep problems, and within a week, a lot of their sleep problems were completely turned around. So it is a really, really, really wonderful book. No matter how old your child is, so let's say you are, and I'm sorry, I know I made it sound dreadful, but let's say you do have a 9 or 10 month old baby who isn't sleeping fantastically, and you're just like, oh crap, this is going to be the hardest thing I've ever done. Really, I think that her technique will work brilliantly for you. I will say this, your baby is going to cry. If you are opposed to your baby crying, I would probably not recommend this technique for you, but I would also probably say there is probably not a technique out there. And I say this lovingly, but if you are a mom who's opposed to hearing your baby cry, I would probably spend some time coming to terms with the fact that they will. There will be many, many, many things along your child's life that may be challenging and may be difficult and may result in them crying, but are imperative to them being successful human beings in life. Sleep is one of them. This is a gentle way. I never once felt like I needed to leave Q on her own. I never felt like I was harming her in any way. I never felt that she was all alone. It actually went really easily. And realistically, me needing to be as close and doing the things that I did was probably more for me than even for Q. I think it was easier on her than it was on me, you know, because sleep training just has such a negative stigma. So your baby will cry, but I promise you this really is a gentle, gentle, gentle technique that if you can just wrap your brain around the fact that yes, there will be some tears, but this is a gentle, loving way of doing it, and that it will set your child up for success for a future of being a good sleeper, which will be so vital to their development. I really, really recommend this book to you. So I mentioned in the last video, and I repeated it at the beginning, the 4-month sleep regression is not something that you have to be a victim of. There are ways around it, and even in later stages of development, if your baby is struggling to sleep, I highly, highly, highly recommend the Sleep Ladies Goodnight Sleep Tight. You can get it in the Amazon store. You can get it on your Kindle. Go check your local library. If, you know, I get it, funds can be tight. The book is very actually inexpensive. I think it was only like maybe $9 on Kindle, so it really wasn't bad. But I realize every penny counts. Go check your local library, rent it out, read all of it. Don't just skip to the part. She gives wonderful examples of other families and the struggles that they were going through, so you realize that you're not alone. So check it out, and hopefully this helps you realize that sometimes even when you have the best of intentions and you do all the research in the world, you make a mistake. But everything is fixable. So I hope you enjoyed my experience. I hope you learned a lot from it. Go out and get that book so your baby and you can get some sleep. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you want to watch more, check out one of my other videos and subscribe to my page. I'm also really active on other social media outlets, so please follow me on Instagram and Twitter. You can click on the links to my page or search me using @officialthatmom. Thank you again so much for watching, and always remember, don't be afraid to be that mom. I'll see you next time. Bye.